You want to introduce yourself just in case some people don't know you?
Sure. So do you want me to start, or do you want to feed me a question and then have me answer it?
Yeah, you can start, yeah.
Okay. All right. My name is Jay Haynes, and I am more commonly known on the Hit Film forums as Film Sensei. I have a YouTube channel where I do different video tutorials, mostly on hit film, but I'm expanding into other things as well.
When did you start using hit film, and when did you discover it?
Actually, I was a professional karate instructor for a long time, between 1990 and 2018, last year. And when I was running my school, I did all kinds of different things. And one of the things that I started doing was I started making what I call dojo films, right? Where I would have a camp with a bunch of kids, and those kids would come in, and I would teach them how to do all kinds of choreography, punch and hit and smack, kind of a thing, and then we would actually film an entire movie in the camp, and then I would rent out a theater and a limousine, and all the kids would get dressed up in their best suits and ties and dresses and things, and we would go down to the theater and we would watch the movie in the theater, and it was so cool, right? And so I made a couple of movies that way, and then I had this idea in my third movie that I would do a sort of a matrix bullet effect using Nerf guns and Nerf darts, and so I didn't know how to do that, so I went online and I started looking around, and the next thing you know, I found a video by a guy by the name of Rody Paulus, who runs Action VFX now, but at the time he was making tutorials on hit film, and he had a tutorial on how to do this matrix bullet effect. And I had never heard of hit film, but I said, man, this looks pretty cool. So I downloaded it and immediately said, oh, I have to own this. And I didn't even bother with the trial of it or, the express version. I went right to the pro version, and I immediately was able to put it together. And then I realized, wow, I can do all kinds of other effects too. And so I started doing it. And that was back, I think, in 2013, maybe. 2012, something like that, maybe 2014 at the latest, I think. It's been a long time ago. I was in version, when I first started, they had just come out with Hit Film version 2 Ultimate. Hit Film 2 Ultimate is what it was. And I have upgraded into every version since. Version 3, version 4, 2017, all the way up to the current version, which currently at the time of this recording is 12.3. And a couple of years ago, I was reading something, and somebody said, gosh, it's just so difficult to do text in hit film. And I thought, no, it isn't. I'm going to make a quick video to show how to do text in hit film. And that was the start of my channel. My very first video was like a 43-second video on how to do text in hit film really quickly, and that's how that started. It's probably been close to 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of discovered it on the internet when my friends showed it to me, and I'm like, oh, it's actually a really powerful software. I went to the Express. I didn't went to the Pro version.
So you have the pro version now?
Yeah, I have it on my computer screen over there.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV show right now?
I am old enough that I can tell you that when Star Wars, the first movie, A New Hope, came out in 1977, I stood in line at the theater to see it. And I remember being only 9 years old. I was very frustrated that I had to stand in a line to watch a movie. I had never had to do this before. And I'm like, well, we have to sit in this. And my parents were like, everybody says it's really cool. I just rather go home. And then we went in finally, and we got in the movie theater. We sat down and we watched this movie, and I came out a changed man. It was like a life-changing experience. And it's hard to explain to people who did not go through that. But these lines like wrapped around the buildings, people would they just would get out of the theater and go back to the back of the line and line up again. And it's different than it is today because, today you can kind of camp out and there's whole parties going on and this and that. But you just had to wait in line until a seat came available to you. And you just sit there for hours until the next showing had seats that, were empty. And it was so unbelievably different than anything I had ever seen before. And so Star Wars is my all-time favorite movie, but I am a big fan of older movies. I am particularly a fan of directors like Howard Hawks, John Ford, Alfred Hitchcock, the old Walt Disney, movies themselves. And also Rocky. Rocky is one of my all-time favorite movies too. So
yeah, I know what you mean. I work at a movie theater, so I'm dealing with Endgame right now.
Oh, I can believe it. There's a lot of people watching Endgame. Yeah, at the time of this recording, Endgame has just come out, and it is a pretty big deal. And we went and saw it. My son is a huge Marvel Universe fan. He is 13 years old, and he just his favorite character is Thor, and he loves these movies, and so there was just no way we were not going to go see this movie on the opening weekend. And it has been very satisfactory, as far as a completion of the entire arc of the Infinity Stones storyline. It has been very satisfactory. We were very happy with how it went.
It was a good film.
Yeah.
So I know you were like a sensei at like a karate place. What was that place called?
So I started training in 1982 when I was a teenager. I was 14 years old. And then in 1990, I had graduated from college and I went to the University of Colorado in Boulder. I have 2 degrees in business. And I started teaching for my instructor. He's a man by the name of Terry Bryan. He has since passed away. And I taught for him for 4 years. And in 1994, I bought the school from him and I continued to teach. I renamed the school the Family Karate Center, and it was in Colorado Springs. And a couple of years ago, I moved to Virginia because my wife had just a tremendous career opportunity of her own. And so last year, I sold the karate school to one of my students, and he renamed it again, just like I did. So now it is in its 3rd generation of leadership. But I was a full-time professional karate instructor from 1990 until last year when I sold the business. And that's a pretty cool job to have. Let me tell you, that's, we're talking 28 years is a pretty nice career. And it sure beat working for a living. That's for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What is your favorite part about making a tutorial, and what's your least?
I think my favorite part is getting excited about what I would do, and you see something or somebody requests something, and I say, oh, I could do that. And it happened this morning. Somebody said, hey, can you do this such and such? And I said, yeah, it's easy. You want me to do a tutorial on it? Well, that'd be great. So I, this morning pretty quickly was able to bang out a tutorial. I think that the hard part is when I get busy and I don't have the time to make tutorials, and I am very consistent. I produce a tutorial every Friday morning. It comes out at 6:00 Eastern time here in the United States every Friday, and I do it without fail. Right now, part of my problem is I'm working on developing an entire master class with almost 70 videos completely covering all of HitFilm, right, from beginning to end, for a online university. And that is taking up a huge amount of my time, and so I can spend very little time doing hardly anything else. But that's what I'm working on right now, and so it's just the time crunch of making sure that everything is out and it's all correct and everything like that. The hardest part is just getting it done and keeping up with the schedule of it. but I really do enjoy it, and I particularly enjoy working with the community. They are the hit film community is the best there is.
I really like the forums.
Yeah, the forums are really unique because usually in forums there's a lot of trolling and there's a lot of negativity and this and that. And the FX Home, the makers of Hit Film, have done just an amazing job of keeping the forums so positive and so energetic, and it really is nice to see the actual developers in there interacting with you and listening to what you have to say and giving advice and saying, hey, we can add that to the software if it's really something that's important to you. And I mean, it's really nice to be able to interact directly with the people who are actually making the software.
So what's your favorite part about filmmaking? Because I know you made a couple like short films for competitions.
I have, like I said, I made these dojo films, and they came, let me see, I think I made 9 of them total. And believe it or not, my favorite part of making a film is cutting the film together, is the actual editing process. I really enjoy doing that. And then when the edit is locked down, I really enjoy putting together the special effects of it. Not that I don't enjoy filming it and, scripting it and, coming up with the idea and things like that. But my favorite part is actually cutting it together, the editing itself, because it's so exciting to see it all come in together and you say, wow, this is really going to be good,
So Hit Film, announced from NBA, the conference that they have about the upcoming things for Hit Film. What's the most that you're excited about?
That's a good question because they came out with a lot of very, very big news items during the NAB conference. And I would say, it's funny because most people have said that the After Effects plugins, being able to actually use After Effects plugins in HitFilm. And by the way, HitFilm will be the only software outside of After Effects that will be able to actually use those plugins. That to me was pretty exciting. I I'd probably say that'd be it. Although there were a lot of exciting things that they came out with that they said, that they said they would be doing over the next year. And that was pretty, I don't know, maybe they're going to bring in a new tracking software plug-in that's going to add right into HitFilm. And it should be pretty darned inexpensive. And if it works as well as we think it's going to work, I might be more excited about that. So we're talking 3D camera tracking. It's all point-based. So all you have to do is literally just put the footage in and click the button and say go, and it will track that, and then you'll be able to lock down models and every 3D object you like right in your footage. And in theory, it's going to be amazing. And if it delivers as well as I think it will, it's a game changer for sure. At this level of the industry, at the price points that HitFilm comes in at, which is very inexpensive. It will change how people on the low end of expense wise will be able to make films and the things they'll be able to do.
Yeah, it's awesome. When I heard a lot of announcements, I was just excited. I listened to the podcast that they had, and it's just it's so awesome. These things are actually going to be put in the software, and I can't wait to see how they work, and especially the 3D tracker. I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Well, and it's unusual because they're usually FX Home is, and rightfully so, is pretty tight-lipped about things that are coming out. So it's very unusual for them to come out and say, hey, these are all the things that we're planning on doing. But it's really exciting to see that.
Mic drop.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. What other softwares do you use?
I use all kinds of different softwares, including Blender. Blender is probably my second big software that I use, and I actually am I've mapped out a whole series of tutorials on Blender that will complement those users in HitFilm Pro, these tutorials are going to be about Blender specifically for HitFilm users who don't know anything about Blender. I'm going to start with here it is, and this is the basics of it. And then I'm going to move into here's how you can make 3D text that you can drop right into your HitFilm projects, and here's how you can use Inkscape to complement Blender and drop in 3D logos. Plus, of course, there's an individual on the forums. His name is Frank. He goes by the name Spider Hank, and he has a special build of Blender that is specific to HitFilm users, and it is a truly remarkable build. And I'm a beta tester on it. I've been working with him, and I'm excited about what he is coming out with. Basically, what I am waiting for is for Blender 2.8 to come out of the beta stage. Right now, it's still beta software, which means it still has bugs. They're still testing it. They're still doing things. But July is the target date for it to go straight up as the new version of Blender. And the interface is completely different. You've heard about, if you've never used Blender, but you've heard how horrible the interface is, how user-friendly it is. Everything you've heard is true. It really is as bad as they say, but not anymore. The new version, the 2.8 version of Blender is absolutely fantastic, and it's the best version of Blender I've ever seen. And I have been using Blender literally since the beginning, since it came out. On and off, not all the time, but on and off. So Blender is my second big one. I also obviously use Audacity, and I'm working with some other, Filmstro I'm a very partial and fond of Filmstro. It's a purchased program, but I have played around with the free version of it, and it's fantastic. And I'm working with some morphing software so that I can do some morphing tutorials. I've kind of teased a little bit of that on the forums as well. But so I have a lot of things in the queue. The other one that I use a lot is Handbrake, because if you're going to use cell phone footage, you have to use Handbrake to get it to sync correctly, because the variable frame rate that's used by a cell phone makes it difficult to work with in any nonlinear editor, even HitFilm. And then also screen capture software tends to come out in variable frame rate. So Handbrake is a great piece of software to use to be able to change your footage to or transcode, as the term is, your footage to a fixed frame rate and make it real easy to use in HitFilm. So one of my top biggest tutorials is how to use Handbrake to convert your footage so that it's usable in HitFilm.
That's awesome. What is your favorite effect to use in HitFilm?
I love working with the particle sim. It is just an unbelievable effect. And, I am fond of, the shatter effect, and I'm fond of the parallax effect. I use that a lot. I use the light flares a lot, and I use Surface Studio a lot in my personal stuff, but the particle sim is by far the most fun thing to use and play with in HitFilm Pro for sure.
Definitely. I remember one day I spent a whole entire day just playing around with it and see what it can do, and I gotta say it can do a lot. If you spread it out and think what you can build. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And every time you think that you know everything there is to know about it, then you learn something new and you go, my gosh, I had no idea it could do this too. So it's a rabbit hole that goes real deep, but it's so much fun. So much fun.
It's definitely fun, to see what you can create from it.
Oh yeah. It's wonderful.
I think my first thing I came up with a fire smoke, and it went up. This is pretty cool. I did that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's just a basic thing that it can do. Imagine all the other things. Yeah, the first thing I ever did it with it was create sparks. Ember sparks that flew off of a sword. And it's wow, that was really neat. And I was just touching the surface of it. So the big effect that everybody wants to do now that really needs the particle sim is, of course, the ash disintegration effect from Infinity War. And so, That's the one. And now that Endgame has come out, as of this recording just last weekend, there's a resurgence in the interest of this effect, and all of a sudden everybody's watching my tutorial on it again. And I have a pile of questions that people are asking. Well, can I do it this way? Well, what about this? And that kind of thing. So it's pretty exciting to see what people get excited about it too.
Yeah, I've watched that tutorial when you did that.
Yeah. The snap.
Do you watch any other tutorials or filmmaking shows?
I do. I watch, there are certain people that I absolutely follow religiously. Hitfilm's channel. I watch every video they produce. I watch Film Riot. Obviously, I think everybody watches Film Riot.
Yes.
I watch every video they produce. And then, anything that, are specific to Hitfilm, and there's a bunch of them out there. I will follow, obviously Frank, Spider Hanks, Greg, Gray Motion, Dafter Things, Tony, he does these stop motion things that are really, really, really fun. And so, there's a bunch of smaller channels. I have a bunch of friends who do these tutorials. Jamie over at Film Empire, for example, and I have known each other for a long time. Anything that Mike Miller produces, Triam 23 on the forums, is a must watch. And in fact, he's to be honest, my go-to guy. If I get stuck, then I go and I ask him the question, and the man always has the answers. But he learned from people like Simon Jones and Tony C., who they don't do a lot anymore, but when they do, I'm first in line to watch anything that they talk about too. There's some young people on the forums now, Zach Allen, for example, who are putting out some amazing special effects, and you're just like, wow, man, it would be so cool to be a teenager and be able to play with this software. I can't even imagine when I was a teenager, I was playing with an 8mm camera, and claymation, and that's about all I had, I remember when, the first idea that you could start working with video on PCs came out, and I thought, my gosh, this is going to change everything. And it has changed everything. It's really amazing. So
yeah, I remember that when I was a little kid running around with the camera.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So do you have any stock footage that you use? I know Action VFX is the main popular one. Do you have any others?
I do. I use a lot of Action VFX stock footage, and right now, as of this recording, they have a 50% off sale going on, so it's a pretty big deal. It's running between May 1st and May 15th, 2019. And I'm definitely jumping in there and picking up some more stuff because right now it's so inexpensive. I'm also a member of Production Crate, and I watch every video that they produce too, in case you're wondering, right? They do some amazing things over there. Justin Barrett, who is also on the forums, he has done Clever Tagline is his moniker on the forums. He has done several videos for Production Crate, specifically related to Hitfilm. So anything that Justin produces, I'm watching it also. But I use a lot of Production Crate assets as well because they have some amazing things. I also own assets out of the Triune store, Ryan Conley's Film Riot store. And mostly sound effects, but they're amazing and they're fantastic. I bought them specifically for fight scenes that we were doing for my karate school films, and I still have them, and they're wonderful. They're just wonderful. There's a guy on the forums, his name is Eric Matyas, and he has a website called sound.org or soundimage.org, and that has all kinds of free music, sound effects, and texture files, images, things like that. I use his stuff all the time because it's unique and it's different, and you don't hear it and see it a lot, and it's really high quality stuff.
So the next question is about a movie. So you're like and like when you're in a theater or at home, have you ever had like a visual effect scene like wow you?
Well, yeah, especially early on in my life when I saw, Star Wars, or I saw Tron for the first time in the theater. I was 12. I thought, my gosh, how do they do that? Kind of a thing. And then, obviously the other Star Wars movies that have all come out since then. Today, I'm not as wowed because, I know how they do all this stuff. But I am impressed with the just huge amount of effects that they can cram into one movie, But it's funny because like there was a movie called Young Sherlock Holmes that came out in like 1985. I want to say it was a Steven Spielberg movie. And they had the very, very first computer generated, fight happen where this stained glass, window comes off of the church and starts fighting the priest. And I thought, how do they do that? Well, it was computer generated, thing. And it was only like 6 shots, but it revolutionized. It changed everything. I remember when Terminator 2 came out and they had the T-1000, was it T-1000? The metal man, and he was able to melt right through the bars of the of the jail, and I thought, how do they do that? So it was those kinds of, and as it turns out, those were the big ones. When the Matrix came out and they did the first time the bullet scene, when I saw that, I thought, how do they do that? So those are sort of the the groundbreaking moments of cinema history. But the reason they're groundbreaking was because we'd never seen him before, and the first time you saw dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, I was in a theater, and when that movie came out, we watched it on opening weekend, and the scene in the kitchen where the Velociraptor is chasing the kids, and they're in the ceiling, and the Velociraptor jumps up towards the camera. The woman in the seat in front of me literally jumped over her seat and landed in my lap. And she was like an older, well, I wouldn't say older. She was a middle-aged lady, maybe in her 40s. I was like 27 at the time. And she had her 2 teenage sons with her, and they gave her, they messed with her for the rest of the time. They were just, can you believe she jumped in that man's lap over there? But it was so real that we had never ever seen anything like that before. And she literally, she was very embarrassed, obviously, when it happened, because she just reacted. She had no choice, because it was so unusual and so different. So those are the memories that I have of, as new effects came out, and I thought, man, that's just incredible. I mean, how do they do that? So
I don't know if you saw Doctor Strange. That was a really good movie.
I've seen them all because my son is a huge fan. So yeah, I've seen them all, and a lot of them more than once. So, yeah, so I've seen Doctor Strange. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I was like that movie, like when I first saw it in theater, that wowed me, because it was like so much in the background, so much visual effects. I was like, man, I would not, like, I couldn't imagine the VFX artists over there.
Yeah, well, and Javier Valbar, who now works for HitFilm, but before he was working for HitFilm, he did a guest tutorial on the HitFilm channel on how to do the Doctor Strange Ring of Fire effect. And it was as good as as you saw in the theater. It was absolutely astonishing. And it had tens of thousands of views on it, and with good reason, because it was one of the best effects you'll ever see. And I got to meet Javier. I had lunch with him one time, because I was, traveling to where he lived nearby, and I got in touch with him and said, hey, I'd like to get together with you. And I told him, I said, that was one of the best tutorials I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was so perfect. Everything everything was so well explained, and it was so easy to replicate, and it was just truly something. And it's amazing that you can see an effect like that in the theater and then go home and do it on your own personal computer and do it every bit as good as you'll see, the pros do it. It's just astonishing. So that's the exciting part of what we've got going on here in the hit film community.
What was your first VFX effect that you made? I know mine was a lightsaber.
A lightsaber. So yeah, so was mine. Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you want to be technical about it, I had an 8mm camera, and when I was a kid, I sort of created a stop motion car crash. That happened. I would say maybe that was the very first one that I ever actually did. It was all practical. Obviously it wasn't. There were no computers back then, that we, the people, could use. But my very first effect that I did in a computer was without a doubt, lightsaber, rotoscoping. And I love to do lightsaber rotoscoping. I actually, did an entire, short film called The Devil Went Down to Coruscant. It was we did The Devil Went Down to Georgia, but we did lightsabers instead. And that literally took me 6 months to do, because before hit film came along, it was a very slow process, and it would take me 40 minutes to do 2 seconds of footage of one lightsaber. And then if there were two lightsabers, and in some of the shots there were 4 lightsabers, one, each of us had one in each hand. It took forever to do, and it would take 40 minutes just to do a 2-second clip. Now in hit film, I could do the whole darn thing, in maybe 5 hours total. But then it literally took hundreds of hours worth of work. And it was painful, but it was so fun. And I really, really enjoyed it. So
what is your favorite actor or actress in a film?
Well, that's a good question. My favorite actor is Cary Grant, and my favorite actress is Katharine Hepburn. Both old school actors and actresses. However, I'm a big fan of Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne also, as well as Gary Cooper. But all old school, right? All old school. As far as actresses, I'm a huge fan of Audrey Hepburn as well. And I really am a fan of old school silent films. Harold Lloyd is my favorite silent film actor. But of course, Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and Clara Bow, all of the old school silent film actors and actresses. They were so amazingly talented. And you watch some of these things and you go, oh my gosh, how did they do these physical comedy stunts? They're amazing. They're really something. So I have a lot, but Cary Grant is my all-time favorite. He was just so cool and suave and debonair, but Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne are close seconds for sure.
Yeah, I would say my first is Tom Cruise, because the Mission Impossible film, it just blew my mind, especially he did all of his stunts, and it's crazy.
Yep, I got to meet Tom Cruise once. I was in college, and he was at the university, and I shook his hand. But he's not much older than I am. He's about 5 years older than maybe. So he was quote unquote an adult, right? And I was 19, right? He was 24. But he was mostly famous for Risky Business at that point. It was an old movie that he had done where he played a teenager. But I had seen him in some other films. He had a smaller parts in some other films. Legend with Pia Sedora and it was Legend with Mia Farrow. And he was in a movie. Oh my gosh, I forget the name of the movie. But he was sort of side roles until he did Risky Business, and then he became more bankable. My favorite Tom Cruise film, though, is still Rain Man. What a great movie Rain Man is! Just an amazing story.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite project that you have work on?
I would say as far as like a hit film tutorial, my favorite one I've ever done is the Infinity Ash disintegration effect. Yeah, that's my favorite one that I've ever done. But as far as like I made a movie called with my karate kids called The Fire Sword, and that one was really fun. I also made a movie called Younglings, and it was essentially, and it's a very fun movie. It was essentially a cross between Star Wars and Home Alone, where the Empire comes in and takes over the planet and imprisons all the adults, but the kids are still out there, so they start setting up traps for the Empire to fall into. And the kids got to design all the traps, and we filmed it all on the fly because they invented everything as they thought them up, and it was so much fun, and the kids loved it, and we had a great time. So,
favorite FX home onboarding?
Wait, say that again. Favorite FX home what?
Onboardings, like their films that they come out.
Oh, wow, that's a good question. My favorite one that they've ever done? Wow, they're all so good. Oh, it's hard to pick one. Which one of these is your favorite children? Well, they're all my favorite. Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that. I have to go back and look at them all. I would have to actually look at the list because that's a very good question. I don't know.
Yeah, they came up with a lot of awesome.
And they're all so good. They're just amazing. There was what was the one where they, the Star Wars one where they're running out and they're trying to plant the bombs in the bunker and stuff. That might probably be my favorite. I can't even remember the name of it. That's terrible.
Do you have any advice about like making a tutorial?
My advice would be to do it better than I do it. I have a tendency to wing tutorials too much. And the way I do a tutorial is probably not the best way to do it. What I do is I practice it a couple of times and then I just fake it. And sometimes it comes out real good, sometimes not so good. What I should do is actually write a script and film it all and then voice over it and do it that way. But I just find that I'm better at winging it because I've literally taught 100,000 karate classes in my life. And so I wing it and that's what I do. So my advice would be, don't do it like I do it. Don't do what I do what I say. And what I say would be script it out, film, it, do the voiceover, and then cut it together so that it's nice and smooth and easy to follow. Don't wing it like I do because it's not the best.
Do you have any projects coming up? If you can't say, then it's okay.
Like I said, the big thing that I am working on right now is the Blender stuff. I'm coming out with a whole series of Blender tutorials, and they're really going to be exciting. They're really going to be people who have never worked with Blender will be able to watch my videos and immediately start working with it. And given the fact that Blender is a free piece of software that runs on almost every computer, it's going to be very good. And I'm not going to cover all of Blender, obviously, because it's massive. I mean, you could do a lifetime's worth of tutorials on Blender alone. But I am going to cover the basics, especially for hit film users who are really looking forward to, to seeing how to use Blender to do the things they want to do in hit film.
Oh, that's awesome. So this one you can ask me a question. Anything you want.
Okay. What's your favorite movie?
Ooh, I would say Mission Impossible Fallout because I really like that movie. I'm a fan about the whole Mission Impossible series, and this one was just a good wrap up. I'm glad they're doing 2 more. Yeah,
it's a very, very good series of movies, well told, and the action's just incredible. Really. I bet you're jealous that I got to meet Tom Cruise.
Met Tom Cruise. Wait, what?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I've met a lot of people over the years just because, I've met a lot of people. But And a lot of them were like that. I just met them, shook their hand, and went on. But I found him to be very charismatic and very articulate and super nice in the few moments that I actually got to chat with him. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
That's it, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right.